It feels like every other day, LIV Golf just drops another bombshell on us. This time is no different, as chief executive of the Breakaway Series has made the shocking claim that if golf's established premier events barred LIV participants from competing, he would create his own majors. How will that play out? And what's happening over at the other side of the conflict, the PGA Tour? Keep watching as we talk about all this and much more. First up, what did he have to say? Let's talk about who made these bold claims in the first place. Majed Al Sarur, a Saudi billionaire tied to the royal family, was instrumental in the founding of the cash-rich rebel organization that ripped the golfing world apart. Now he stated that if the Masters, US Open, and US PGA barred LIV players from participating, he would celebrate. Given the new competition's changed framework, the LIV Tour presently doesn't award players official world ranking points, the main avenue to qualify for the majors. This unexpected drawback has sparked a heated debate on whether LIV players should be allowed to play in the renowned 4 traditional tourneys in the future. And well, you'll find some pretty conflicting opinions depending on who you ask. But now, in a wide-ranging interview with The New Yorker, Sarur made the extremely bold suggestion that if LIV players were banned, he'd just construct his own version of the majors. Yep, you heard that right. If that wasn't shocking enough, he then went on to say that he believes all these major tours are run by inexperienced businessmen, so he would celebrate if the majors didn't let the defectors take part. Up next, let's look at how people reacted to these statements. To the surprise of absolutely no one, the whole thing drew some harsh criticism from the golfing community. According to golf writer Dan Rappaport, it might just mean the end of established golf as we know it. Make no mistake, this is how a sport dies, he wrote, and to be honest, he's not wrong. The majors are rooted in history and tradition, which has helped convince several PGA Tour professionals not to take Saudi money and jump ship to LIV. You can't just buy the prestige and recognition you get from playing in an established major. So that level of history would be pretty hard to reproduce or replace for LIV. And of course, increasing the already absurd prize money on offer to players appears to be the only option for LIV to build their own majors. But is that enough? The 48-player LIV field presently battle for $25 million US in each regular tournament, with the season finale in Miami likely to give quadruple that prize money. But now, the qualifying standards for future majors are likely to be revised in order to provide a way for LIV players to compete. If we look at what R&A Chief Executive Martin Slumbers stated during the Open, the situation doesn't seem so dire. After all, he claims he never said that the greatest players won't be able to compete. The Open should remain open to anybody, but there has to be some way to make it work, whether that's through an exemption or through the qualifying procedure. Coming up, the LIV boss replies to that infamous Phil Mickelson tweet. It finally happened. Al Sarur addressed Mickelson's iconic but very controversial statements against the kingdom's human rights record in the New Yorker story. In an interview with writer Alan Shipnuck that Mickelson subsequently claimed was off the record, the 6-time major champion dubbed the Saudis scary mother effers to work with. He also then talked about the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi and how they have a frankly terrible human rights record. If that wasn't enough to put him in the spotlight, he also went on to say how they kill homosexuals, and the only reason he joined LIV was because it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change the way the PGA Tour functions. With all the PGA Tour changes we've seen recently, Lefty was onto something there, but more on that later. First, let's look at what Al Sarur said. Well, he clarified that they don't kill gays, and that Mickelson's remarks nearly brought the league to an early stop. He then disclosed his strategy of filling the early fields with mediocres. He also rejected allegations that Tiger Woods was offered and declined an estimated $700 to $800 million USD. But since this was first confirmed and then denied by Greg Norman, we're not too sure if that's the whole truth. Next, Cameron Smith also spoke about the massive Masters danger. Here's the thing, Smith's pleased with his decision to join LIV Golf, but one possible outcome remains a heartbreaking option. The Open Championship winner says he'd be saddened if Augusta National made a decision that prevented LIV Golf members from competing in next year's Masters. After all, Smith and his Saudi-paid colleagues are now barred from PGA Tour tournaments, but as of right now, they're not technically banned from the 4 majors, which are all controlled by independent regulating organizations. The 4 majors are scheduled to reevaluate their eligibility requirements for 2023, and it's still uncertain where LIV Golf players would stand when everything's settled. But the Aussie doesn't have to worry too much, since he gets at least 5 years of exemptions to 3 American majors as the champion of last year's Open Championship, and he may play in the Open until he's 60. Let's look at how the Aussie's been performing lately. We know that Smith had previously earned a Masters invitation by winning the Players' Championship and placing T3 at Augusta this year. It'll now take a shocking decision from the club to prevent him from returning to its hallowed fairways, where he has 4 top 10 performances in 6 outings. But still, the 29-year-old is aware that such a decision is still a possibility. It'll be an unfortunate decision since Smith's considered to be a strong danger at Augusta in April, if he's cleared to compete following 2 near calls in the previous 3 years. He finished second to fellow LIV Golf member Dustin Johnson in 2020, and he briefly led the tournament this year before a late fade-out. And hey, he's stayed in terrific shape since winning his first major and joining LIV Golf, having won in Chicago and nearly losing to Johnson in Boston. Following that, he'll compete in the last regular season event in Jeddah before the team championship in Florida at the end of the month. The next LIV Golf tournament isn't until the new year, but this Aussie will participate in his home for the first time since 2019 this summer at the Australian PGA Championship and Australian Open. He'll have a unique opportunity to spend time in Australia, something he wouldn't have been able to do as a PGA Tour player owing to the wraparound schedule. Next up, the PGA Tour to introduce 4 new tournaments. According to ESPN, the PGA Tour is expected to announce that the WM Phoenix Open, RBC Heritage, Wells Fargo Championship, and Travelers Championship would be among 13 elevated tournaments with at least $20 million payouts in 2023. They'll join 9 additional tournaments in which the PGA Tour's top players have committed to compete, as the Tour continues to compete for the greatest players in the world with the LIV Golf circuit. That's not the only change for 2022 and 2023. The PIP has been raised from the top 10 to the top 20 players. Not only has the player pool grown, so has the prize money, which has been increased to $100 million from the originally planned $50 million. So top players will be identified based on these top 20 lists. It seems like Commissioner Jay Monahan's really punching back, so expect to see a whole new revamped PGA Tour soon. In 2023, the PIP requirements will also change, as the influence of social media will no longer be considered. It'll instead be determined by online searches, general awareness, golf fan awareness, media mentions, and broadcast exposure. Finally, the PGA Tour relocates the CJ Cup from South Korea to South Carolina. Because of travel restrictions because of the COVID-19 outbreak, the PGA Tour is moving the CJ Cup out of South Korea for the 3rd year in a row. The tournament will be held at the Conagry Golf Club in Ridgeland, South Carolina this year. And if you'll remember, the last 2 events were moved to Las Vegas instead. The 78-man field includes 15 of the world's top 20 golfers. Sadly, 21 players from last year's CJ Cup in Las Vegas are now members of LIV Golf and won't get to compete. Anyway, Conagry hosted a PGA Tour event last year to replace the Canadian Open, which still had travel restrictions in place. Garrett Higo won that competition, but he's not competing in the CJ Cup. Ricky Fowler is a sponsor exemption player. In 3 events, he has 2 top 10 results, including a runner-up performance in Japan last week. Harris English was also granted an exemption. He was out for the first part of last year recuperating from hip surgery. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think separate majors could work for LIV, or would that doom the sport? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.